and we have everybody here. So I'm going to convene our work session for July 13th, 2021, and we will open it up to public comment on non-work session related items. 3 minutes per speaker. See if we have any. City Clerk, it looks like we've got the Vice Mayor and attendees. You're probably on top of that to let her into the meeting. Yep, there we go. All right, we have no members of the public, so why don't we get started with our work session? And it's a work session about the mid-year State of the City and Progress Report. And City Manager, whenever you're ready.
Hi, Council. Good evening. Good to see you all tonight. I have a lot of information for you, and Nancy has the Excel spreadsheet. It looks scary and long, I guess, but let me say that I will not cover this verbatim at all. Certainly you can read along. I did not pre-distribute this, but if you would like me to send the report to you at the end of the work session, I'm more than happy to do that if you like it for your record. Councillor Cumby, is it too small? Do we need to increase the size?
I think I'm okay.
Okay, great.
A little larger would be nice. I think if you control plus on the, yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Janine. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, good. Actually, Nancy's handling the
Nancy.
size. Thank you, Nancy. So if we need to increase size as we move along or anything else, let me know. But for sake of ease of presentation in this format, I'm just going to move from top to bottom to give you a quick overview of the progress that we've made at this halfway point through calendar year 2021 in meeting the goals and objectives that you adopted for the city at the first of the year. The first category of goals that you adopted is category A, which is holistic economic development, and with the notion that we'd like our economic development plan to be somewhat Laramie-centric and tailored to the needs and desires of our community. So some things that have happened in the first 6 months, I did have the opportunity to meet with our consultant, Fourth Economy, who helped us put together and ultimately adopt the Thrive Plan in January of 2020. In meeting with them and talking about this goal to update the Thrive Plan to really reflect a post-pandemic economy, I think we came to the conclusion, not only myself and Fourth Economy, but also our LCBA director, who I visited with as well, the three of us all came to the conclusion that it might not be quite time to update the plan yet because of the uncertainty about whether we are, in fact, in a post-COVID economy. We continue to see the pandemic kind of rage and vary and mutate and all of the things that we know because we're living them every day. So I have not yet put out a request for proposal to update the plan, in part because it just feels like it might be a bit premature. I would invite any comments from council and I'll finish this update on this milestone goal A1. And then if any of you feel differently and you would like to move forward to get this request for proposal out and kind of update our plan, I'm happy to hear your feedback on that. I would share that also with respect to the plan, we did meet with the University of Wyoming's new president, Ed Seidel. The mayor and vice mayor joined me at that meeting, and Fourth Economy showed up to present in a Zoom format the plan that you all adopted in January 2020 with some specific attention to elements of it that had town and gown effects or consequences. I believe the President's office intended to review and consider that with other staff at UW. And in fact, next week I have a meeting with the College of Business Dean to talk about and to help me gain a better understanding of where the College of Business has determined that they might coordinate and fit in to some of those town and gown objectives. So that's really exciting. I think you all know that my feeling as we entered into this process and throughout it all the way to adoption was that we needed to do better than we did back in 2008 to make sure that we had a plan that encompassed the University of Wyoming and recognized the unique role that Laramie holds as the home of that institution. So it's very important that we make that connection with our new leadership on campus. Also in this second half of this box, I'll note we did memorialize for you the various municipal code amendments and other work that have been done with respect to this goal, and also noted that we are moving forward with some housing-related discussions. We'll talk about that a little bit further down in this section as well. So I guess I'm curious if you're all comfortable with the position that I've taken to not engage the services of Fourth Economy and update the plan quite yet. I'll let you know I'm sort of shooting maybe for a reevaluation in the third quarter of 2021 and kind of see what the fall brings us as far as pandemic effects.
Does anybody want to add a comment about that? Go ahead, Councilor Crombie.
I just, City Manager, I think your assessment is very accurate and very current to date, and I thank you.
Anyone else? All right, City Manager, I agree with Council Member Cumby and with what you shared with us. It really just seems prudent and practical and common sense. And I think in light of other comments, you should interpret the lack of further comments from the council as pretty much being in agreement with that and your assessment.
Okay. Council, I really appreciate that feedback. So I'll circle back with Fourth Economy and also with Laramie Chamber Business Alliance and also with Laramie Main Street, who are kind of our two primary partners engaged in economic and business development. We'll reassess in the third quarter, and I'll come back and talk to you maybe then or beginning of fourth quarter. So I'm going to move to milestone 2, 3, and 4 under our economic development section. Milestone 2 was that we would implement an improvement program for primary retail corridors that could involve a public-private partnership. I have to tell you, this is a concept that I've had for many years. It was shared by our now no longer with us economic development representative, Sarah Reese. We have fleshed out and sketched out a plan many, many months ago, but frankly, before COVID has sort of put us in a posture of feeling like, or at least me, in a posture of feeling like it's not quite the right time to bring forward a comprehensive strategy. I will tell you, though, I haven't let go of this. I think we do have some primary retail corridors that could use attention, and in public-private partnership, we might be able to improve those. We've been working very specifically with the owners of the shopping center that the old Kmart building is in, and that's the Woodbury Group. Literally met with them last week in our most recent meeting. And I think there is a potential for a partnership here. I can't give you any detail about it in any great way right now, simply because we're waiting for some additional data from them. But they've been hustling to regroup after COVID and to work with potential retailers with whom they have letters of interest to reassess whether those retailers continue to have that interest, make sure the interest is strong, and then we know that they will likely move a number of retailers into that old Kmart building, and it's going to require probably some facade updates and potentially some interior minor remodel to the building to accommodate more than one huge retailer and work well for 2 to 3 to 4 smaller retailers. So that was a positive meeting last week, and we are right now just in a waiting posture, waiting to hear from Woodbury. I think that'll make a great pilot project for us to test out these concepts of retail corridor improvement through public-private partnership. Milestone 3 was that we would complete the development code audit and consider revisions that the audit might recommend to us. You know from our housing work session last week, or 2 weeks ago, that planning staff have worked extensively on this, working with community builders and also with our housing action team. We have built a very robust web page. I did include the reference there for you with all of that information, and of course had that first work session with you on June 22nd. We have a joint work session, the second in the series, forthcoming on August 10th with the Planning Commission and City Council both present. We're also working, I shouldn't say I am, the planning staff is working to plan some public open houses that we would like to integrate into this process or this series of work sessions. And then, of course, we noted for you here some of the code revisions that have come forward thus far and some that may come forward in the future. That's in milestone 3 and also in the milestone 4 box. Last thing I'll mention is we did create a new opportunity for developers to utilize an escrow account and sale lots in order to kind of lower the bonding requirement and hopefully allow them to proceed more smoothly with their projects. Council approved that. We're really appreciative of your approval. To date, no one's used it, but we're getting positive feedback on that option.
Great.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just saying great. Yeah, I was really curious about that because it seemed like just a unique little project, or maybe even more than little, a substantial change with developers and city code that had some input from both the city and our private sector people. So to hear that it's already getting utilized and receiving a positive response, that's what we want to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, we're hoping it's going to be a good tool for developers. In milestone 4, we determined we'd review ways that we might improve housing opportunities in the community. I'll tell you, staff are working already on some of the items mentioned here, particularly setback requirements, density and infill standards to bring you a suite of revisions in that area. We also recognize the council has been a little hesitant to receive suites of code changes, that maybe it's just too much all at one time. And so we're talking internally about what is the most effective way to bring those kinds of things to you so you don't feel quite so overwhelmed. We know that they're very, very complex, so we'll work on that. I will say staff are not working toward any of the land banking or rental inspection licensing concepts noted in this goal, simply because we're just not quite there yet, and also we expect to see some further direction from City Council on those two things. So that concludes the economic development section. I guess it'd be a good time to ask if you have any questions.
While you guys are thinking about that, let me also just add another note of appreciation and encouragement about that Kmart building, or the former Kmart building, and some activity there. City manager, as you know, that's a property that a lot of people have an eye on, wonder about, ask questions about, have hopes about in terms of its operation as a future retail space. You've talked to council members about it. I know at various points over the last couple of years, and I know that council members in our previous economic development staff person also had, hopes and dreams and daydreams and conversations about it. So that's keen to hear that there's been some activity there, and it goes without saying that we want to know as soon as you can say with any assurance that there's something going on in there. And I won't even get into some of the specific hopes about what real retailers might go in there because I don't want to jinx it. But that's great to hear that there's something potentially coming out of that. It's not great to have that big store space empty, for a number of reasons. And then there are, of course, a number of businesses that I think people in Laramie would like to see, or something similar to those kinds of businesses. So as I'm blabbing about that building, has anybody thought about any questions or follow-up for Janine on these economic development topics? Go ahead, Council Member Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. City Manager, you mentioned some facade renovations. Are those due to our code or due to the use, the expected use by the developer?
Through you, Mayor, Councilor Harrington, that's a great question, and those are due to the expected uses and demands, frankly, of the retailers that would occupy those buildings. I think we all probably understand fundamentally that there's a real need for visibility and visible signage. And then also, like I said, that building is just a big sort of yawning mouth, so to speak, and to carve it into discrete spaces where 3 or 4 smaller sized retailers could, functionally locate will take some modifications. But yeah, those are not being driven by city code. They're really being driven by the owner and the prospective tenants. Now, there has been some discussion about the potential for building an additional pad site on that lot. That's a much further out equation, but I will say in our conversation with the owner this week, we did cover again with them that if a pad site is developed, meaning another sort of standalone retail space similar to like what's there right now where the shoe store used to be, then that will trigger some code revisions, particularly for landscape and other things. So we're having those conversations with them, but again, the code will really kick in if they move toward the pad sites.
Great, thank you, City Manager. And I think actually, I'm glad you added that second piece. I think maybe just a bit concerned that we would maybe deter some investment in that building. But if it's, I mean, that's fine for new lots, in my opinion. So thank you for the detailed answer.
Yeah, you're welcome. Just a quick follow-up, Mayor, if I could. When we say code, I think I know what you mean, Councilor Harrington. I think you mean our development code and local municipal code. So that is the code I was speaking to, but I should probably be more specific to say, building code is something that always applies for safety and health, and of course that will apply in this regard. But there's not a lot of building, and it's not as complex for a facade, right? Like the facade just shouldn't fall on people's heads. That's probably a good way to say it.
Right. No, good clarification. Yeah, good.
Yeah, the code guys are going to laugh at me if they hear that I just said that. So let's not tell them.
Well, and if it gets too complicated, we can, they can just scrap it and stretch a big vinyl banner across it. That seems to be a popular choice. Other questions or follow-up on this, on these topics? This is a big part of this update for me, council members, because again, there's a lot of uncertainty, and frankly, what I think you're hearing from the city manager is progress is being made on areas where we feel like we can, and then there are some other areas where it seems more prudent to wait and see. City manager, I want to touch on your mentioning, speaking of code revisions and changes, and the council's expressed desire to take these things on in smaller pieces or smaller chunks. And I want to add to that the council also recognizes that not every single text change to development code necessarily warrants its own work session and three readings. I think that what we'd hope to see is, if we can get there, a way to bundle like changes into packages and break up the work that way if it's possible. And I bring this up and I communicate this by way of also our desire to want to try to make things workable for the staff, who we understand have a lot of projects going at the same times and a lot of different demands on their time. So I just want to be clear, it's not the council's intention to say that every single text change needs that level of scrutiny, but if there were some bundling of like changes or themes to the groups of work as we work with the staff to make those changes, I think that's our intention and that's what our desire would be. And maybe this is all well understood, but I think it's okay to restate it in the context of the mid-year update. Council members, anybody else throw in anything on that discussion? Thank you, Council Member Harrington. Go right ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. That brought up something for me as well, and I agree with you regarding sort of how we could maybe more palatably bundle things. But I also think one thing that would be helpful is to be a little more involved in sort of the earlier stages of it before they're at the sort of like ready for showtime moment and they're before us at council, because I think some of those things, not to pick anything in particular, but they would require considerable amounts of council work to amend, to sort of, and I think probably staff maybe recognizes that at times, that it's, the intention is that council will be amending things, but obviously in a meeting, just with Robert's rules alone, we would be in for some very lengthy meetings. So I think being able to flush some of those things out ahead of time would be helpful. And I say this and in my head, I'm thinking I have no idea how we functionally do that. But I think it's worth considering. And I don't know if other council members agree or not, but I tend to think a little more early involvement might be helpful.
I like this discussion. Councilmember Schuster, thanks for waiting. Go right ahead.
Thank you. It's tough. I can't see your face, so I can't see you go like that when you acknowledge me because I only have so many people up there. Several things. I realize we always need to update. We always need to update. But I'm hoping that we do a lot of friendly updates. I always joked as when I teach my students about something, if you do something wrong, people are upset and they're going to tell 20 people. But when you do something that is good, they're not going to say anything because they expect it. I want to try to stay as friendly as we can to the contractors, because the more contractors we can get involved and get on our side, the better it's going to be for business when we do these updates. When they tell me something, oh, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? And they're angry. That's when we hear something about something that they don't like. But when we do something that eases something for them, they'll never say a thing because they're just happy it's there. So the other thing is, before COVID hit, I got to see the conceptual drawing of the Kmart building. And yes, they want to do 3 facades, 3 grand entrances, so that if we get 3 businesses, each one of them can go, wow, look at me. So, I mean, that was really cool to see the conceptual drawings. So it's really good. I hope we get it going again, because it would be a shot in the arm for that side of town. It would be a heck of a shot in the arm for that side of town. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Schuster. And I got to say, I agree with all those points. I think your first point is time tested to be true. City Manager, I think you touched on this a little bit, but maybe if you wanted to add a few more comments. I think we have over the last couple of years, we've tried to really have a lot of sensitivity towards those things suggested by the private sector and the business sector, in terms of suggestions made about areas of the code where we can change. And I imagine we'll continue to do that, but I believe I heard you mention earlier in this part of the presentation, you had some recent conversations with our economic development folks. We touched on the escrow change that we made to future development projects, which we know was brought forward by some partners in the private sector. So we've have some examples, at least, of what Councilmember Schuster was talking about, and trying to continue to do that. Sometimes it's challenging because, as Councilmember Schuster points out, oftentimes we don't hear from folks until something's being proposed that may be problematic or is perceived to be problematic. But when we can be proactive with those positive things, I think it pays dividends for us and the business community. So it's good to hear a couple of those examples. And three businesses, I heard. Well, that's good. That is a big store. Let's see what happens. Anything else for the city manager on this? Oh, thanks everybody. All right. Thanks for waiting, city manager.
Thanks, Council. So I'll move to the B category, which is environmental stewardship. And you have a number of goals in this section. Maybe, Nancy, we can just show the whole section, if that's possible, with the page break. Milestone 1 was to consider public policies for your retail use plastic bags. You set that goal forward in Resolution 2020-07. You know, a lot of work was done on that in the spring of 2020. Candidly, we have set aside some of those efforts based on the CDC's COVID recommendations that came out early in the pandemic for touch surfaces and other things. However, while we did have a good, successful run working with University of Wyoming marketing students in the spring of 2020, we have not set aside all of their recommendations. We recommended and you approved for a solid waste marketing intern to work with the solid waste crew to sort of take an approach to the low-hanging fruit that our University of Wyoming student groups recommended to us, and that is just simply to increase public awareness about ways that residents might just choose to curb their use of plastic bags. So the interns are going to be working on that this summer, and then as we see how the COVID situation evolves, we may be able to implement further objectives that you adopted and that our marketing interns helped us figure out how maybe to approach. Milestone 2 was that we wanted to monitor and then address, if needed, sedimentation in the river and intervene as needed. Not much has changed in our progress on this goal since the last time we talked in January. Council is aware that Public Works did install 2 of the gutter bin test sites in the downtown area. That's a pilot program. We're continuing to monitor how those gutter bins are performing and to really assess whether the product will be a beneficial use. If you're not familiar, counselors, the gutter bins literally just like go into a storm gutter, and as water flows in, storm waters flow in, it collects debris and other things, and then that can be cleaned out. So there's lots of pleasant little surprises in there. You can imagine cigarette butts and all kinds of things that if we catch them there at the inlet, then they do not flow into our system, and then certainly don't enter the Laramie River either. And that includes sediment like sands and salts that we use to clear roads. Nancy, you can scroll down to milestone 2.
City Manager,
Excuse me, 3. Yes.
would you like us to hold questions till the end of each section, or ask questions as we go along? What's a better use of time?
Why don't we do by each lettered section?
Okay.
Is that okay, Mayor?
Yeah, that's great.
So category 3 under environmental stewardship was just to continue the strong effort we've been making for renewable energy installations and increasing our energy efficiency at our city facilities, properties, and within our operations. There is a litany of items included in this update because, we've been pretty active in this regard. The big categories are the solar array that's been installed at the Recreation and Ice and Events Center, a subsequent project that the Assistant City Manager is working on to consider another solar installation at maybe Fire Station 3 or the Police Department. That would be a use of Blue Sky grant funds again, we believe. So they're in early planning stages for that. Another big category of work in this area is at the Municipal Operations Center, North Campus, which is currently under construction, as you know. We're retrofitting any existing buildings with energy efficiency items and planning for a 25 kilowatt solar array as well to be installed on that site. The other third big project is the Sailor Solars project, which is a project we hope to complete working with Pacific Core and NextEra out on the Monolith Ranch. Things continue to happen there, a little bit of movement recently with our 2 partners. And then the fourth kind of big category is the the many and various recommendations from the investment grade audit that Honeywell did for us. And then there's kind of a litany of items that we've chipped away at from the investment grade audit. Probably the last big category I'd mention is the wastewater treatment plant project is right now 60% design complete. And when we finish the construction of that project, we do anticipate a 20% saving in electrical usage at the wastewater treatment plant. So that's kind of exciting to see some numbers like that starting to come our way. Milestone 4 and the last one under environmental stewardship is to expand our recycling services and look at value-added partnerships. Really not a lot has occurred in this area in the first half of this year. As you know, we did bring some recommendations for budget allocations to increase our glass recycling options, and staff are just doing the work upon your approval of those funds to get that in place, and then working with the marketing intern also to make the public more aware of the enhanced glass options once they're ready to receive those glass items. So that's environmental stewardship. Any questions?
Go ahead, Councilmember O'Doherty.
I'd love to see what those sediment collectors and how often they have to be cleared. So if somebody would give us a 10-minute update sometime, maybe at a work session, if anybody else agrees, some pictures would be nice. It might help the public understand that all those cigarette butts don't just disappear, and all the various other things that end up in the gutters. So if anybody else is interested, I'd love to see that. Otherwise, just tell me which staff member to follow around to see the next time they clear it. Thanks.
I think it almost seems like it would be a good idea, City Manager, at a meeting perhaps a series of meetings, maybe even one of the ward meetings down the road, to have those environmental stewardship projects showcased and covered for members, potential interested members of the public. And I also want to just take a quick minute here to recognize, of course, that our environmental advisory council has played a role in a lot of these, and in communication with the public, and representing the city and incorporating that community feedback into a lot of these projects as well. And that should be recognized. And of course we do, and we're really appreciative of it. I think, like you said, City Manager, there's a lot of things in there, and a lot of progress has been made in a relatively short amount of time. And of course, that's something we would like to see continue on. And I believe we can expect to see a great deal of that continue on in the future. So I also want to hear more about the drain catchers, the solar project stuff coming down the line. And I do think at some point we're going to have to revisit what our city's strategy and approach is going to be with these single-use plastic waste issues that we've talked about before. Other comments on that? Other enthusiasms that anyone would like to share? All right. I think we can move on.
Thanks for the feedback. I'm imagining maybe a work session field trip. We could all go clean out gutter bin catch basins. That sounds like a really horrible job. But at minimum, maybe we could video what comes out of those and do some public education. That's an interesting idea. So thanks for that. I'll pass it on. We'll work on it, maybe with our marketing intern. Category C is maintaining and improving city services for our residents. Milestone 1 is the technology efficiency program. Specifically, in this year, we're focusing on our enterprise resource planning software replacement. This is the guts and soul of city operations to replace this software. And there's a lot of information here, I think, in this box, but the gist of it is that the project to replace that software is going well. And we have dozens and dozens of staff members who are involved in this project being implemented, and it is a lot of work, but at this point on schedule, and people are excited to move this forward. This project will likely continue, I would suspect, from today for probably 18 months beyond this day before it's completed, and that's a fairly optimistic estimate. It could be 24 months. Milestone 2 is to maintain our goal of being really a employer of choice, if you will, so that we can attract the best and brightest. As you know, in this first half of the year, we did negotiate and approve the labor contracts with the local 946 firefighters. And then also in the budget, we included an optional retirement match program for staff that is new and being well received, and also the 2% performance-based compensation reserve for fiscal 22. Milestone 3 is to support the effort to acquire the Pilot Hill lands. We did note here that those lands have been acquired, and so we may need to update this milestone or modify it somehow to move into really the next phase of the Pilot Hill project, which is ongoing development and operations of that site. We've staff fielded a number of requests from the Pilot Hill project group to support them. We are right now conceptualizing, mostly in the Assistant City Manager's office, what a trailhead might look like, parking, restrooms, informational signage. We also conceived of wayfinding signage with them and concluded the installation of those wayfinding signs with the Public Works Department putting those signs up around the community just, I think, about 60 days ago. Last category, milestone, under category C is to review the transparency training procedures and accountability in our policing services. And as you know, Council, you set that goal forth originally in Resolution 2020-38 in July of 2020, and then carried it forward into 21. Nancy, if you wouldn't mind clicking over to the subsequent worksheet, the second worksheet in this workbook. Okay, thank you, Nancy. So Council, I just included this in a separate worksheet because there was a lot to cover here, way too much for one little box, so I needed 4. Resolution 2020-38 has kind of 4 separate categories of goals for us. We updated you on progress that had been made through December 31st at the last point. At this point, I've updated this to reflect progress made through the end of June. You'll note the major new change has been the establishment of the working group for police and community as an ad hoc group of the city. That group had its first meeting just a couple weeks ago in late June. They are going to work for the next 6 months with the hope of delivering recommendations to city leadership by the end of this calendar year. And those recommendations will be touching on most of these 4 boxes or goal subsets that you had set forward in Resolution 2020-38. So the other thing I would mention, of course, is you did bring on a facilitation team, and that team will work with them at their next meeting on July 22nd and all meetings moving forward. So we're excited to have that team on board and excited to get working with the group in earnest. And that concludes that subsection of goals. So I guess it'd be a good time for questions.
Questions from the council? This is a topic we've covered in a great deal of detail, but if there's any questions, I can tell you that we had an initial meeting with our facilitators, and I think they're going to provide us exactly the kind of professional services that we require with this project, and make sure that those discussions are productive, balanced, and working towards some sort of goal that the council is going to then do its work on in the future at the conclusion of that working group. So I think it's moving along well. I have not discussed this with the facilitators, but I suppose if there's further information for that the council might want coming out of those meetings as we move forward, we can certainly visit that topic and provide that to interested council members who may want to know the progress of that. Also, there's going to be regular updates about that to the council. So you may just want to wait to receive those because they'll be coming frequently and in a timely fashion. I don't think I'd say anything else about any of that. I don't know if anybody else has any questions. Okay. All right.
So Nancy, with respect to the screen share, City Clerk, we can switch back to the 2021 goals worksheet. Thank you. And we can move to section D, which is maintaining and improving infrastructure. This is a pretty broad-ranging category, Council, as you know. Milestone 1 deals with the quality of our street system as measured in our pavement condition index. We've noted for you here the street sections under construction this summer, those that are currently in design and moving, we assume, to construction next season. And then I'll remind you that we are bringing in the professional consultants to update our pavement condition index rating this fiscal year. You'll remember that our former consultant has retired. We're going to be bringing in someone who's going to use newer and frankly much more precise, and there's clearly a typo there. There is no word a-precise that I know of, but should be a space between a and precise. Anyway, this technology a lot more precise, and so it'll be interesting to see how the change in methodology that from what we used to use to what we will use might affect our pavement condition index rating update this year.
Is anyone frightened? Is anyone frightened about what that assessment may actually reveal? We'll visit that at the conclusion. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the things that keep a city manager and council up at night, huh? Milestone 2 is really looking at our stormwater system and exploring the possibility of creating an enterprise fund. or a business-like fund to operate the system. That's a new option that we have based on changes in state statute that occurred last year. So we do have our consultants on board, and we're taking a look at that. We expect we'll be back in front of the City Council with some recommendations and data in the spring of 22. Milestone 3 is, oh, we've accidentally scrolled up, Nancy. Thank you. Milestone 3 is to complete the many, frankly, traffic signalization projects that we have planned around the city. I'll let you know the South 3rd Street project is at 60% design completion. Got a little stalled with some changes in personnel at YDOT, but we do expect that that bid will go out in the winter, construction and installation in the spring, summer. The North 3rd Street traffic signal, that, as you know, is a YDOT project that the city is supporting it heavily, and we know now that we will need to rehabilitate the 300 to 400 blocks of Flint Street next summer to really complement YDOT's signal installation there at 3rd and Flint. Milestone 4 is the continuing expansion of our recreational amenities in the Greenbelt Park and other recreation areas. Todd has shared with us here what we know just from your last council meeting, that the TAP grant was approved and been submitted for Spring Creek Trail Phase 1. We're also working on the Rotary Club new park potentially at Grandview Heights, also considering a Coughlin Pole Mountain new park, and then finally looking at the Trestle Bridge and trying to figure out if there's a potential to connect a path out there to West Laramie. And then lastly, Scout Park. You can see we do have the improvements that are going in there going in this summer. Milestone 5 is the multi-year major water and sewer improvements for the North Side Tank project. Council, this is a huge project, you know that. We've really got what I said here is kind of a suite of 4 projects that are necessary to greenlight and open up housing development in Northeast Laramie. The Northside Tank is one of the biggest projects. This is in excess of $10 million project that we've been working on for about 5 years. It'll be huge. The good news is it's nearing 90% completion on the design. We're scheduled to bid this fall and construct next summer. The second, or B project in this suite, is the Northside Sewer project, which is really a complementary corollary on the wastewater side to the water system installations up there. This is 60% complete, also going under construction next summer. Third, or our C project, is the Reynolds Sewer project. Again, this is sanitary sewer, design's 100% complete. First phase of construction this summer, next phase in summer of 22. And then the fourth and final in this suite of projects is our 41T3 well drilling project. As you know, we've tabled that to deal with the lawsuit filed by the university, and also the university's desire for the city to surrender that priority well position that the 41T3 has and sort of subjugate it to the new A and B UW wells that are irrigating Jacoby Golf Course. So we're working through that. I hope to get this 41T3 well drilling project off the table and back in the works as quickly as possible when the litigation concludes. Milestone 6 is our last in this category of infrastructure, and this is to take a look at our water and our sewer rate structures. We've had some significant changes with some of our largest users, the university, the South Laramie Water and Sewer District. So I'll let you know we have been working with the consultant to update our 10-year financial plan, to update our consumption history and projections, which will likely create some significant changes, possibly to the rate structure, likely some effect on the rates themselves. I will share with you, though, that, Council, if you recall, we have not adjusted water or sewer rates in, I want to say, 4 years. So we're a little overdue for that adjustment, frankly, but we will be bringing back some data for you to take a look at and some recommendations in the fall. Likely will we will bring an ordinance to affect any of those rate structural or amount changes in November, December, because as you know, we always implement new rates in January. So we would need to move through that ordinance process November, December, so that when we implement any rate or structural changes to our rate system, that it takes effect in January, which is the most cost effective for our users. And that's infrastructure. It went by so quickly, but I would say this category represents, gosh, if I were just off the top of my head guessing, probably $50 million of investment in this community. It's pretty exciting.
It's major. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. City Manager, my question has to do with the pavement condition index rating. When do we, and maybe it's in the document and I missed it, but or maybe you did mention it and I missed it. When do we expect to have those findings, and will we get a little work session or update on those findings?
We would like to have them. I would like to have them in the winter because they will factor into decisions and recommendations I'll make to you for budget, where to spend money for streets, right? And yes, absolutely. We traditionally have had our consultant come and present the findings and the data to you. So we will definitely be in front of council sharing that with you as soon as it's finished.
Perfect, thank
maybe
you.
in a standalone work session, Councilor Pierce, maybe in a standalone work session and maybe as part of budget work sessions. I'm not sure yet.
Great, thank you. Like Mayor Weaver kind of mentioned, I think we are all anxious to see. So that'd be great.
And I would note that the city's use of the firm where the individual is now retired, he was utilized by a number of municipalities and had, as I understand it, as it's been explained to me by other members of the city staff, came up with some pretty innovative and useful ways to do that for communities. I don't think there was anything deficient about it. I just think it represents a major change in how we've evaluated our infrastructure in the city of Laramie. So that just produces some anxiety for me, simply because it's an unknown. It could be that we get a very similar assessment, or at least in terms of the overall condition. I just think it's something we need to be keeping well within our sights. Yes, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I agree. My comment was not intended at all to be negative. In fact, I think we should have a pool and kind of do an over/under. But because I think they're going to be close. That's what my gut's telling me. But I don't know. I'm just anxious more than anything else.
Right. And Vice Mayor, like you, nothing about my previous comment meant to imply that I'm willing to bet cold hard cash on the barrel about which way that's going to go. I just because it's an unknown and because it represents, as the city manager pointed out, at least one aspect of tens of millions of dollars in investment here, and we're always concerned about how we're going to keep up with that. We know that there are different areas of town where if money wasn't an object, we'd like to invest into improvements in the pavement, and I think everybody has a couple of those in their ward here on the city council, or more than a couple of them. So it's just something that is interesting and a little bit anxiety inducing. And so I agree with the notion that we'll need an update about it as soon as possible. And city manager, I don't know if this can be arranged. It might be interesting to have someone from that firm maybe talk a little bit about methodology or something along those lines, if it's appropriate, and if it fits within the scope of the work that we use them for. That might be useful for some of us or interested members of the public, maybe. Any other questions about infrastructure? It's a big one, $50 million worth of public investment in our community, although it is a topic we visit often. Okay, all right.
All right,
Yep.
Thanks, Council. So we're in the last category of goals. This is our intergovernmental collaboration goals. As you know, this year you established 3 intergovernmental committees of city and county representatives to work more closely with the county to accomplish really 2 significant and well-defined objectives. And then in the third intergovernmental committee under milestone 3, there were a couple of objectives identified, but this committee refers to themselves as the catch-all committee. Like, so they talk about a wide-ranging variety of issues. So I'll start with milestone 1 and what I call intergovernmental committee 1, and their focus was to clarify the role of the Environmental Advisory Committee. That has been accomplished, although unfortunately I did not note it in the box there, but now I realize I left that out. So the role of EAC and the makeup and composition of it has been clarified, no changes made to it. Their second part goal was to move forward with a joint aquifer protection plan for the municipal and county government. That committee met, in fact, recently with the city and county attorneys, a memorandum of understanding. We believe will be presented to City Council and the County Commission in early August, with an RFQ being drafted concurrently to be issued perhaps in mid-August, and upon green lighting by the Intergovernmental Committee to advertise for professional services. We hope maybe to be back with a recommendation to the governing bodies as to what consultant to hire for these purposes. And I'm hearing, although not a consensus of this body, but I'm hearing through conversations with various of you that we would like to have this work completed in the summer of 22, preferably in June, but maybe July or August. Milestone 2, or Intergovernmental Committee 2, had a goal to create and adopt a joint agreement for development in the rural-urban interface, where we identify high-priority growth areas for the city. Progress made to date. Staff have been working to really update our projected growth area map to identify high-priority urban growth areas and to move kind of beyond this general concept where we just say we're going to consider everything within a half mile of the city limits, or the donut is the jargon that we use as our growth area. So really to hone down on where we want growth to occur. As you know, we're working hard to facilitate growth on the north side with all those infrastructure projects I just talked about. So that would obviously come out in the map as being a high priority growth area, where we will likely de-emphasize and consider a low priority growth area, those areas that exist over the aquifer protection area. So staff have been working on that. I'm recommending a process of engaging for professional planning services that is exactly the same as the Intergovernmental Committee 1 will use and will occur at the same time as the CAP update and review of regulations that the CAP update might show us as being useful moving into the future. And then milestone 3, or Intergovernmental Committee 3, the catch-all committee, they had a couple things they were going to work on. One was to conclude and finalize the memorandum of understanding between city and county for housing and paying for the housing of prisoners at the Albany County Detention Center. That MOU has been completed and submitted for consideration to the governing bodies. I'm not sure when it will come forward, but I think it's largely complete unless we end up discussing some additional changes, which is possible. And right now that committee is reviewing our emergency services in Laramie and in Albany County. And then I'll stop there because obviously you all are sitting on these intergovernmental committees, and if there's any updates you have to contribute in this section or would like to share with everybody else, that'd be great.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Janine, for combining those RFQs. Did you say Q? For milestone 1 and 2. I think that's really smart, and I think that's an excellent plan. So thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, Vice Mayor. That seems like the best approach. Frankly, I don't think we have the luxury of not trying to combine work with our partners at the county on these topics. So as much of that as we can do. it makes sense. It's a team effort with them, and so making sure that things are happening between the teams, that is the working group committees at the same time, makes sense. Councilmember Gabriel.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this process would have gone a lot quicker had the county attorney not resigned, because we were kind of in the mix, moving along pretty quickly, trying to get an MOU between city and county together. But since Peggy Trent moved on, we had a time period there where the city attorney didn't really have anybody to talk to concerning that MOU. But now we have someone in place, and I think we have some good communication and really a willingness to move along on this process. And so looking forward to it.
Thank you, Councilmember Gabriel. I think that's a very good point with regard to some of the work pace, and those things happen sometimes, and our committees are going to keep working to keep those things moving forward. I really appreciate the service from some of you with some of the frequent meetings that you've been having, both with regard to the CAP and the intergovernmental services catch-all. Some good work product coming out of that, and some good progress made on it. City Manager, I'm really, I just want to agree with the Vice Mayor again that I think tracking those at the same time so that we're seeing some progress in the near term is good. I think your timeline that you shared with us is accurate. I think that's the one that the council members are supportive of, and I believe that is the same view up the street there. Without being able to say with 100% certainty, that's my understanding as well. So I think those timelines and that calendar fits well with what we hope. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. You know, just to reiterate what Janine had mentioned, we're moving our discussion into the emergency medical services area right now, and we're just so pleased that Commission Chair Gosar is really interested in this topic as well. So I believe and am just thrilled that we have a new partner to help with those expenses. And I'm just wondering, or opening it up to other council members if they have an interest or an expertise. And I'm thinking maybe, you know, Councilor Cumby with her nursing background and medical background, there might be something there. I don't know, but just if anybody else has an opinion or wants to jump into that discussion, please let Councilor Somerville and myself know, and we can certainly do that as well. So, and I don't know if Councilor Somerville wants to add any updates or her impressions. We can do that too, if that's okay, Mayor.
Yeah, I think it's more than okay. And if people can't get their thoughts collected right now, it's certainly a discussion that can happen later too. I want to add one comment further, which is that I think that over the long history of the city of Laramie and Albany County, there have certainly been many instances and many decades of cooperation on a variety of things. And I think those things serve the local community well when we're able to do those things and work in tandem with each other on different kinds of projects. And so I'm very glad to see that there's been a lot of activity in that area. With regard to the topic of emergency services, it seems to me that, like a lot of things in healthcare, those costs are just wildly beyond what they were 20 years ago, certainly 30 or 40 years ago. And so to dig in and take a look at those now and look at different ways that we can balance out the cost of shared services with the county, whether we're talking about those EMS services, whether we're talking about those jail services, and look at those areas where we can share and combine services with each other. Not only is it the good government right thing to do, in case anybody had any doubt, which I don't think anybody here does, it's also necessary because of the fiscal demands that it's placing, I think, on the two government agencies. So in addition to being, good government cooperation that I think stretches the taxpayer's dollar further, it's also something that we absolutely have to do because of our revenue picture in Albany County and everywhere else, really, I think, are sharing some of those same concerns. So it's timely work, and I'm glad we've been able to do it. And I look forward to the, near-term discussions about finishing some of these projects. That's going to be great.
Yeah, and Mayor, if I could just jump in here too. I mean, to be frank, I wasn't aware how lucky I was to live in Albany County, based on the services that we provide. And I think we really need to explain that to our citizens in Laramie as well as out in the county, because we are fortunate. And when we look at other counties and communities in the state, we have an amazing system and service that we provide. So we are fortunate here. So.
Right, and it doesn't come cheap. It doesn't come cheap. But if you take a look at a couple of statewide newspapers that are covering some of the challenges that cities across the state are having with EMS-related services like ambulance service and things like that, I think you'll get a picture of what the Vice Mayor is talking about. At the same time, we have to figure out ways to pay for that and make sure that it doesn't skyrocket to the moon any more than it already has. Councillor Cumby, I see you waiting to make a comment. I'm sorry. Thanks for waiting.
I was just going to respond to Vice Mayor Pierce. I would be happy to talk with you and Councillor Somerville about how I might contribute to your efforts.
Yeah, we want to make sure these services are available to everybody in the city and the county, but we have to be able to do that in a way that's fiscally responsible, and that's a big part of what I think that discussion with that working group revolves around. So we look forward to future updates. All right, other council members, I really appreciate those comments and input from different council members that have worked on those groups. I really just want to thank you for your dedication to those, because I know it's extra meetings, but I also think you've all made it very clear that those are important topics to you and that you want to see some progress on those. So thank you very much. Okay, City Manager, I don't know where we're at here. Is there any further input that you want? Do you have another section of the update, or was this the last section of your mid-year update?
Mayor, that's the last of the goals update. I did want to share, just to conclude this with you tonight, a little bit of information from this third worksheet tab. And while the city clerk takes us there in the screen share, I wanted to also offer Attorney Southard or the Assistant City Manager to add anything I forgot if I missed anything. That was a quick review, and I see I did lose the Public Works Director already. So if I dropped any balls, folks, pick them up if you'd like.
Yeah, that's great. If there's anything there, perhaps the council, if you have questions for someone other than the city manager, that you could also use this as a time to ask those questions. City Attorney, can I ask you to answer a question for me? Sorry about the dog going crazy in the background there, folks. My question, City Attorney, is that with some of these MOUs and these agreements that we're hoping to enter into with the county, are we in a position between the two local government agencies to build on some previous MOUs that perhaps we've been in the past, and use those to sort of build up on, so we're not reinventing the wheel here? That's my understanding, but I just want to make sure that I'm right in feeling that way.
No, I think you're exactly right. Yeah, we're not reinventing the wheel. Like, for instance, with the CAP committee, Janine created the first draft that I'm looking at from modifying a draft from years ago in a similar situation. And I think learn from that situation in the past. There don't have to be huge changes, but no, we are not starting from zero.
Thank you very much. And I just wanted to just cover that again just quickly, because I think that's helpful for us. It would be a much different process if we had to start over from scratch, and I don't think we do. And I think that's in part due to that history we have of having been in agreements with the county on a number of these things previously. So that's going to be helpful for us. And we've even got former members of that body here that can recall those days as well, when those MOUs and agreements were in practice or even being formulated. So that's good news for us, I think. Other questions for Janine or Bob? Wonder if I can risk it. I think a couple of takeaways for me from this meeting are: we're going to revisit this issue of the post-pandemic economic development strategies that we'd like to be putting time, energy, and resources into. We are eager to hear about the business property up there on North 3rd, and look forward to that when there's something to hear about. There's an interest in both the council getting updates and learning more about some of these environmental stewardship projects, some of which we're pretty familiar with, and we've put an affirmative vote behind as the council, and some of them that we just like to get a little more information about as we hear it, and maybe talk about some dog muzzles that I wish I had right now. Talk about some things like that we haven't really covered as much, like the river protection, stormwater drainage devices, get updates on some of those things, and then get further updates on things like the Monolith solar project when we have information. And then I think we'll all be updated when the time comes on these city-county working groups and where the progress is, because we'll be on those committees, and then we'll be considering those items as they move forward to the council. That seems like the nutshell takeaway version of this for me. City Manager, is there anything else from the council? I guess I remembered one more thing. Do we need to have some further discussions about bringing forward code changes, or do we feel like we have pretty good guidance there about ways we can approach that so we can start to efficiently do some of that work? I see you nodding. I think we do, but it's always okay to have further discussion.
Mayor, I think we do. We're taking our guidance from the code audit related to housing. And so that is where we're focused. As you know, in the past, we've worked with the business community, with the subcommittee that LCBA has that looks at our code to chip away at areas of the code that were maybe too onerous or could be revised to just be easier and ease the way, I guess I should say, for the development community. So I think most of the low-hanging fruit in that section is gone. But like I said earlier, staff are working on setbacks and density and infill right now as results of the code audit, and knowing that those modifications could help us to achieve our housing objectives and ease the situation that we have with the tight housing market in Laramie.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you, and thank you for this mid-year report and update. It's very interesting, and I really like it because it allows us to do something we try to do at the beginning of the year, and it's to kind of pull back and look at the broad range of all the different things that the city's trying to do. It's a lot, and it has to be, but personally, I'm very pleased to see a great deal of progress made in a number of areas. Some of them were in the middle of, some of them were sort of at the end of the beginning, and there's some more work to move forward, and some of them are inching towards a little bit closer to completion. So it's just helpful context and perspective for us. Well, with that, yes, City Manager, please.
Mayor, I wasn't sure if you knew I had one more little piece of information I wanted to impart to you, which is looking forward to the next half of fiscal 21.
Great.
Okay. So, Council, we don't have to go over this in detail. I've color-coded it so it's a quick look, hopefully, for you. But one of the things I wanted to just put a bug in your ear about, so to speak, tonight, as we look to the second half of the year, is what I call our pandemic economy. Like every business in the country and in our town, there are issues in the economy regarding supply chain, availability of supplies, cost of supplies, cost of construction, and labor availability and cost. So I'm aware that many of our departments are struggling to acquire material supplies or dealing with delays. I have color-coded these here by department, and I'll share with you the color scheme. Dark red is something that is critical. It's a shortage of something that is critical and is likely to have a very negative effect on our operations. Light red, or the kind of pink color, is something that is serious but not quite as serious. And green is something that, while it could be serious or not be serious, it definitely is going to drive up our cost. So if the clerk wants to just kind of scroll through these, we don't have to go through any in detail, but I just wanted to give you kind of a quick color-coded look at what we're dealing with as far as trying to keep city operations and projects on schedule and on budget. And you see a lot of green here. Some of these things that we're experiencing are increases in costs. The very severe dark red concerns that I have at this time are primarily in our public safety functions at the top of the page, and that is the availability of key protective equipment for police and firemen and other supplies that they need to do their job effectively. So we're hoping that the supply chain issues will start to improve with time. But I suspect that as we evaluate our spending at the end of the year, we're going to see that we have increased costs. That doesn't mean we're going to need budget amendments necessarily, but in some cases we are seeing costs increasing, and in other cases we just absolutely simply cannot get supplies. So an example for you at the top of the page in the fire department section is we're having a hard time finding and then purchasing bunker sets for our fire department. And without that equipment, we really can't take our new firefighters and put them online. They're just not equipped to turn out at the scene of a fire. So this is just a quick look. We don't have to go in detail, but I wanted you to understand that we, like every other business, are experiencing these things, and hopefully it's going to get better. But I don't know what it will mean when it's all cumulatively added up at the end of the year. If we continue to see any of these dark red sections become abysmal or dire, I'll come back to you.
Thank you, City Manager, and I'm glad you redirected us towards these concerns, some of which we wouldn't have had an opportunity to hear about if you hadn't. Yeah, I think it's just another one of these kind of background anxieties that when we have information, we'll know which way we want to go. Hopefully some of these things are alleviated. I keep hearing two different versions of what to expect in terms of inflation and how that's going to impact all of us, and certainly local governments. And we're just going to have to see what happens. I understand, of course, that the city is our city staff and your office, Janine, and our operations officer will do your best to sort of forecast and prepare for scenarios in either direction, but that only goes so far. So let us know, along with those other items we've talked about tonight, when there's something to know.
Absolutely will, Council. I'll keep you up to date. I just thought it was an important forward-looking update for the second half of the year. So,
yep.
Thanks for the time, and if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to me anytime.
Thank you. And I'll remind everybody that the city manager did share that if you wanted to get the presentation, she's happy to send that out for reference if you want to have that. I see Councilor Cumby's interested in the vice mayor and so forth. So I'm confident that she will pass that along, and you can send her an email to remind her if she doesn't. All right. I want to just check real quick and see if anybody needs 5 minutes, or if you'd like to just keep barreling forward, so we can wrap up the work session at the earliest time we can. And I'm seeing nodding. Let's just move and let's just go. So let's do that. The next item here is the ward meetings, and that's I don't know that there's really a staff person to lead that off. The goal here is just to keep up that, as it says in the cover sheet there, maintain options to allow the public to speak to their city council representatives about concerns or questions they have. So I would just offer that for whoever wants to kick it off, if there's any discussion. Yes, Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you very much. Always enjoyed the ward meetings. I had a lot of the same participants every meeting, and I would like to see them come back. I don't know if I need to take notes myself. We usually had a city representative there that kind of took notes on what the people's concerns were, but I'm ready to see them come back. I mean, if it's just me, it's just me, but I would like to see them come back on the 5th Tuesdays.
Thank you, Councilmember Schuster, and I know that this was an item you wanted to cover. You wanted to cover and talk about it. I think that's appropriate. I see the city clerks joined us for this part of the discussion, which is good. When do we, on the calendar, have the next 5th Tuesday month?
Mr. Mayor, it's next month.
It's next month. All right.
August.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. I see you've raised a hand.
Yeah, I just looked at that myself. So it's August, November, March, May, and then again in August.
Okay. So we have a 5th Tuesday next month. Councilmember Schuster's expressed a preference for in-person. I think we've seen that there are a number of ways we can do this. Councilmember Schuster, would you care where that meeting took place? And the reason I say that is if you yourself wanted to do in person, and maybe your other one or two other Ward 3 members wanted to maybe just be there, but maybe do it over the video, that could be done at City Hall. So you could provide that in-person opportunity for people, but you could also provide the remote option for people too. I wonder what your thoughts are about that, just because we're not, like we've talked about earlier in the other work session tonight, there's a little bit of unknown about where we're going to be. It could be that we're in a really good place and there aren't any concerns, but I think it's better to plan ahead in case, some people might be less comfortable with it. If it was held at City Hall so that the video component was possible, would that bother you, Councilmember Schuster?
I think our room's big enough here, and we do have our plexiglass shields all over the place, that I think, I don't know how much it would bother staff to allow people in here. I would like to see it face to face. I had someone this week says, can I come and present a problem I have to City Council? I said, well, you can probably do it over Zoom, because as council people, I'm the only one in the chambers right now, but I'm pretty sure you could still do it over Zoom. And they kind of were shocked looking at me like, the rest of the town's kind of opened, but the city isn't? And I said, no, we're not yet at this time. I don't know. This is going to have to be a decision for staff, too.
I agree.
We have no problem doing it at the fire department. We never were within 6 feet of the people. We would probably have to space out the chairs. We could put those all at least 6 foot apart. So that wouldn't be a problem. We could probably still get 10 chairs set up. And it's been a while since we have 10. We have a good 6 to 8 people that show up regularly. But I don't think we went much over 10 on the last year.
Sure. And we had some of the same people show up for our ward too. My question was whether or not you would have any objection to doing it both ways. Like, say you might be there yourself, and then you might have other people that wanted, both members of the public and the council that might want to still participate through video, because that's certainly something you can do in the chambers. So if we did a mixed version, yeah, go ahead, Councilmember.
What about something like Washington Park at the band shell?
That's an option also.
I think that would be a great spot because it would be easy. The benches are permanent. People could sit as far away as they wanted to from somebody. Could be up on the stage. I don't know if we need to check with the city to see if any of the Tuesdays that we just talked about. We could probably do the next 2 months there that are open, the August and can't remember what the other one was. I don't think November would be pleasant at 6 o'clock at night, but the August one would probably be beautiful. And we'd have to see what the situation demeans, or I don't even what word I want to, how the situation is in November. We might be better in November. We may be the same, and we might be worse. I don't know. In November, we're probably going to have students back, and it seems like our numbers spike a little bit with students because they're not the best on getting vaccinations.
I think everything you said is reasonable, and I think what you said there at the end is what we're all wondering about, is just all these unknowns. I think you also raised a good point for our staff too, to think about this and share ideas, and they don't have to be shared right now. You could pass it along with email later about maybe some ideas you might have about how to make these comfortable and as safe as we can for people. The park idea is not a bad one. I think the vice mayor has mentioned similar approaches. There may be people that want to do that. Let's think about it. I don't think it's unreasonable to try to want to figure out ways we might do these meetings with people in person. City Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to point out, if we had a ward meeting at Washington Park, Zoom having the dual,
right.
Would
that be out?
Okay. Yeah, just to make sure.
Yep. Okay. And what's interesting is I think all of us have people in each of our wards that would have a preference one over the other. But we have some tools and abilities here to be able to do both of those, depending on how we wanted to set them up. It's not an either or. There's different ways that we can approach it. I think what we're really getting at is we want to allow that ward meeting with that openness for people to be able to come in and talk to us about what they want to talk to us about without a lot of the meeting constraints that we have during the work sessions and the business meetings. So yeah, let's do some brainstorming and email each other, and staff email us if you have maybe some ideas you might like to share with us about how we could do that. I understand it's not extremely complicated. We could have meetings outside in the park and require some distancing, and if people are comfortable with that, they could go. I think if some of us wanted to have a ward meeting style meeting, that's certainly something we can do on the video call format as well. So just kind of check with yourself and see which way you might like to go. I don't think there's any barrier to arranging both ways, with the caveat that the city clerk mentioned. Obviously, if we're at an outdoor place, that's going to be tough to do both of those. Councilmember Gabriel, thanks for waiting.
Thanks, Mayor. The last 3 tourism board meetings have been in person, April, May, and June. And we were meeting via Zoom for so many months, and it's worked out well. We are separated, but no mask. Everybody's pretty much back to normal. It's worked out well. Public has been there. I can see us going back to the fire station across from the middle school. And, I guess it's just up to each individual, but what Councilor Schuster has been saying, I think is what I believe in, that we should go back and see what happens.
Okay. All right. Councilmember O'Doherty.
I don't mind exposing council members who want to do that, but I'm not comfortable exposing staff. So I'd say if we do live meetings, that it's just the council members that want to be there and have the doors open so you have lots of circulation and keep the chairs far apart. But I don't think it's fair to expose staff because they'll do what we ask them to do. And just because you're comfortable with the virus doesn't mean the virus gives a darn about how you feel. It's the Delta variant is much more contagious. And anytime we get into small groups, we're just increasing the probability that we're going to cause a bunch of people in Laramie to get sick just before the kids go back to school who can't get vaccinated. So I'm not that excited about it, but if y'all want to be in a meeting in the public, then I don't think we should ask the staff. Thank you.
I don't know that I heard anything there that I disagree with either, Councilmember O'Doherty. I wonder, the thing that comes to my mind is we've got two competing things here. There's a good desire, I think, that comes from a good place to get back to allowing some of that face-to-face interaction between constituents and council members that want to do that. And I understand the reasons for that. Those make sense to me. There is also a good question raised about the staff. I don't know that there's ever been a requirement by this council that staff members attend those ward meetings. I think staff members have traditionally done that because it's also good for them as a way to kind of hear concerns that are coming in that format that don't get a chance to really be talked about in depth with our other meetings. So let's think about those and let's keep up some communication about those. I don't know if anybody from the staff would like to add anything to that point that I just raised. I think in the past, staff has been there simply by way of using that as a chance to hear about, concerns and questions, and different staff members have rotated to different ward meetings to sort of pick up on things. City Manager, you've switched on your camera, so if you want to share a thought about that, I'd like to hear it.
Mayor, I just wanted to confirm what you were saying. When the ward meetings were started, we were not asked to staff them. I took upon myself to assign a member of staff to attend each and take notes so we could follow up for you, but I certainly do not have to do that if that's council's preference, and I appreciate the discussion about staff. Thank you.
I think our preference is just to not create an environment where our staff feels like they need to be there, because I agree with Councilor Doherty. If we have these and then staff folks feel like, well, they're going to do it anyway, so I've got to be there, that's what we want to avoid. We want to make sure that those council members that have that comfort level with in-person meetings also make it clear, and I think you've heard that. You think you've heard that from Councilor Schuster, and I didn't hear anything different from Councilmember Gabriel, that if staff aren't inclined or don't want to be there, that's fine and dandy. There's not an expectation either way. And what we want to be very, very clear about is just because we're doing it, that does not mean that the expectation is that staff be there. And I know that gets a little tricky because we have staff members that might be more comfortable than others, but there is not an expectation there. And, Councilor Schuster talked about taking notes. I don't know that you need to do that. I mean, I think you'll remember most of those conversations. I didn't take notes, and I remember most of the things that were brought up in conversation at those meetings. So let's kick this around a little bit, but let's revisit this topic once more briefly before we get to that 5th Tuesday in August. And we need to revisit it, I think, with at least, City Clerk, what would you say? Probably your preference would be as early as possible, but at least 2 weeks for notice for whatever kinds of ward meetings are going to happen. Interested in your thoughts there.
Yeah, that would be great if we knew by August 17th for sure. That would give us enough time to prepare, whether it's Zoom meetings or whatever we need to set up. If it's going to be outdoors, another week or two would be best, so we can make sure we get the reservation done and things to that nature. So just for availability's sake and stuff.
I'll share this, and I appreciate that. I think your Ward 2 council members would be happy to have a ward meeting over Zoom. If if we end up moving forward with this. I've heard 2 members from Ward 3 that have expressed a desire to meet in person. And I'm going to see what Councilor Harrington has to say about his ward and his thoughts on this.
Well, I think, so I have maybe to your question, I still would prefer to meet on Zoom. I don't know. I mean, to me, this is a very functional way to communicate at this point. We've all had enough experience. I can see how members of the public might have not had the same experience I have had for the last year and a half of using this for their entire work and council lives for the last year and a half. But I also have had the experience, and I'm curious to your all's experience if I've talked to almost all of those sort of like the regulars who come to council to our 5th Tuesdays. Almost all of those people have been in contact fairly consistently to ask questions. I mean, there's one person that comes that always wants to ask sort of like when they're going to get the recycled asphalt on their street. I've already talked to them, connected them with the streets department. The streets department was able to answer the question. Not saying at all that the ward meetings are not useful, because I do think there's a lot of value there. I just don't know about the, going back in person in a, because we aren't thinking about our other opportunities to meet with those people. And I'm curious what you all think about the, whether the value is in the in-person part or the value is in the unstructured public comment part, and the more conversational part. And if that were the case, if we could just set up Zoom meetings with our wards, where we all just sit and chat for a while.
Well, Councilor Harrington, I think that's exactly what we're talking about. And I guess the question that I think we're dancing around is, does the council care if some members from some wards meet in person with constituents that want to go to in-person meetings, and other council members from other wards conduct a similar meeting through the Zoom format? I don't know why we would, but maybe we do. And Councilmember O'Doherty, I saw you raise your hand. I'll go back to you, Councilmember.
What I think people are missing, if we're having 3 simultaneous Zoom meetings, Nancy's been curating those to make sure that we don't get Zoom bombed. And so you can't just open it up like you would at a normal meeting and let everybody just have a go at it, because we could have utter chaos and pornography, which I don't really enjoy. But so I think it's got to be one or the other, and it is going to involve staff if we're going to have any Zoom thing. And then is it really that informal when they have to tell Nancy and then or somebody else that would do that, and in order to get queued up and all that kind of stuff. So it doesn't allow the free flow like an in-person meeting would, and it would still involve staff. Thanks.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think, so yeah, I don't disagree with what Councilor O'Doherty said. I think to me that the part that I would say has been most valuable of the ward meetings is sort of the elimination of the 3-minute time clock, to have sort of a more in-depth conversation about something that isn't really functional in a normal council meeting. That has been valuable. So that's one way we could add some of that back. But I think you're right. I mean, it will be more structured. The thing I'm struggling with as sort of like things reopen, and there are 50% of the meetings are in person and 50% aren't. If you are the person participating on Zoom, we're all becoming pretty adept at Zoom, but a member of the public who's not been doing this for so long, if they're like the one member of the public who's on Zoom, it's not going to be a functional situation for them. Sort of the hybrid thing is a real challenge, I think, unless everybody's microphones, you can't hear a computer across the room. You can't hear them on Zoom. That stuff doesn't function as well. So I'm personally of the mind that we meet outside or we pick one direction or the other. But I am not favorable to in-person at this point.
Councilmember Somerville, I see you've joined us.
Hey,
Yep.
yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to kind of throw in my thoughts is I'm certainly in the bandwagon of not being comfortable potentially doing in-person meetings right now. I think there's still too much uncertainty. I also think that there should be some thought given to consistency. Where I understand, I'm hearing that there might be some desire for in-person. I don't know how that'll play. If Ward 1 is on Zoom and 2 and 3 are in person, or vice versa, or whatever that is, if that creates too much confusion for the public. I personally don't share the concerns about trying to keep the free-flowing comment on a Zoom meeting. I've been on a variety of them, and I think you can structure the Zoom meeting to admit everybody as panelists. And frankly, in our in-person meetings, we're still generally calling on people and then exchanging dialogue and then moving on to the next person. So I think that would still work. So my preference is certainly to stay on Zoom at this point in time.
Well, Council, this is a tough patch because we've got divergent opinions from different council members. I'm going to say this. I'm not sure I totally agree with arguments either way, because I saw the legislature relatively functionally host hybrid meetings with video participants and in-person participants. And I was there for a bunch of those meetings. I don't know. I didn't necessarily feel disadvantaged providing testimony over video when other people were there in person. I'm favorable to mixing and matching on ward meetings, but that's just one single opinion here, and so I'll go with the consensus. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. My question is for Nancy. Do we have breakout room options with our Zoom contract?
We do have that as an option. Yeah.
So this is, and I'm not, that super tech savvy, but I think we can have breakout rooms for the 3 wards. So we would have 3 breakout rooms with the 3 council members in the room. And then we could bring the panelists or the attendees in one at a time and do it that way. Is that possible, or is that just one step too far?
It's possible. They can also select which room. So we can say this is Ward 1, Ward 2, Ward 3, and they select which room they want to go to. So there are some options there with breakout rooms.
Okay. And that might be, it might be a decent compromise to have 3 breakout rooms and then just have the conversation and bring the folks in one at a time based on which breakout room they choose.
So in that setting, Councilor Pierce, they would all be able to join at the same time. And then it would be kind of like our format previous to webinar, where they unmute themselves as they're called upon by whoever's leading that ward's discussion,
Okay. Short of the Zoom bombing, is there ways to avoid that with the breakout rooms?
Yeah, City Clerk, go ahead anytime.
Mayor, through you, we have learned a lot since that instance. So we've disabled sharing for participants, which is part of why we were bombed in the first place. So, we have gone to a spot with our council account that I feel fairly confident that we would not have that as an issue.
So, okay, so thank you. So basically what I'm hearing is if we opted to do the ward meetings and we could come into agreement to still have them via Zoom, we could have breakout rooms and it would be fine. It would work pretty well, right? So I guess that's all I have to say. I mean, I do appreciate Counselor Schuster and Gabriel with the in person, and we have marvelous parks. So I guess maybe we could do like a hybrid, situation as well. I don't think that would be too clear for the public, but there is that option. So
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And I've seen hands up, and I'm just going to go in the order that I've seen those. Councilor Schuster, you raised your hand a little while ago, and then to Council Member O'Doherty right after that. Go ahead, Councilor Schuster.
I'll pass. I've talked enough times. Let some other people talk.
Okay, Council Member O'Doherty.
I don't think you have the same conversation if it's possibly recorded and in front of the whole world. I don't think that people are going to say things. I think people read the room in an in-person situation, and they might tell us something like, well, that we don't necessarily want to broadcast to the whole world. And so, so for August, I'm okay with an in-person meeting, just not requiring staff and opening all the doors because it'll be August. But
what about outside?
Yeah, I think outside is fine too. But I think that the complaint from the public that they're not going to say the same things that they do on something that's more personal on a Zoom meeting. That's all. Thanks.
You bet. Councilmember Cumby?
I find that oftentimes when a constituent has a matter that they feel more personal about and would not want to share in public, that they contact me individually. And
yeah, I agree. I agree. As far as this issue of uncomfortable topics coming up, I can't recall any of those that came up at a ward meeting. I mean, those are public meetings also. But I think Councilmember O'Doherty's point about reading the room is real. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, Councilmember Cumby. Go ahead, keep going.
I was just going to say that the group process of people being together, hearing one another, can often stimulate creative conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely. Something I want to share is I've seen one or two comments, and I mean one or two, maybe three, about this issue of in-person meetings. To the best of my knowledge, and I'm sure I could get a flood of communication after this statement, I have had nobody from Ward 2 ask me to reinstate in-person ward meetings. So this has not, I haven't so far. So this has not been something that's been at the top of my list. Now that could change, having said that, right? But I also want to say this: anybody from this council can go meet with any group of people from any ward, however and wherever they want, at any time. It's not really something that the council has to formally say anything about. The only difference between those kinds of meetings and the ward meetings is that we advertise the ward meetings ahead of time. Functionally, I don't see any difference. So if you have had constituents saying, oh, I'd like to meet in person, there's literally nothing in the way of doing that for anybody that's comfortable with that. And the only difference is those are advertised ahead of time. Councilmember Schuster?
I really like that topic, and I want to kind of ask that. Let's say that I say that I want to use, and I'm going to use this all hypothetically, I want to use the band shelter the 5th Tuesday of August, and would the council be upset if I asked the city clerk to advertise that me and any other of my Ward 3 representatives want to meet out there in the open air? We'll be up on stage. We'll guarantee people stay 6 feet away from us. If we want to tape off some seats and say, please be this far apart, we can do that. Would there be any objection of the city clerk advertising for that ward meeting, whether it be 3, 2, or 1 people of councilors attending?
Council members, you've heard the question from Council Member Schuster. Council Member Harrington.
Mr. Mayor, I have no objection with that. I feel like it's not a quorum of the city council, and I feel like you know, the advertisement of it, I suppose, is the real question, and that doesn't concern me.
And I would like to even say it one step further. I got access to 100 tables. If the other council members from any ward would like to say, gee, could I be 6 feet apart? We set up 5 tables across the front of that, and I could be there too. I have no problem with that. If any representatives from 1, 2, or 3 want to show up, they just got to tell me how many tables, how many chairs.
Yeah. Okay. Other council members' input on that. Councilmember Cumbie, did you raise your hand?
Well, I just keep wondering about having a ward integrated meeting, one outdoor and one Zoom. I just don't know if that'd even be possible or confusing.
Yeah. Councilmember Cumbie, and I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off, and it's not because I don't want to listen to you. It's because you make a comment which then elicits a comment from me. Based on what I'm hearing from Councilmember Schuster, and I'll turn this back to you. I really don't see what the problem would be with what he outlined, and then because I'm sure we would have at least.
Just lost him.
Me too.
Yeah, we lost him.
Are we all here?
Cheers, you're up.
Are we all here except for the mayor? Is that what's happening?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. How about if we table this topic until the mayor comes back, because it sounds like he was on a bit of a roll, and we just go around and start council updates. I believe that's where we are in the agenda. That's okay. We can be a little relaxed, right? City Clerk?
Yeah, we can do that.
So how about if we go to council updates? If anybody wants to volunteer to go first. Or council comments, you can put them together. That's fine.
I will make a quick little comment. Wyoming Territorial Park, we've lost our manager, and we have an interim manager, and our next meeting will be the last Monday of the month after work, which works great for me on my job, so because a lot of meetings are held when I cannot attend.
Thank you. Councilor Harrington.
Thanks, Vice Mayor. The first update I have for you is many of you likely know by now there is a trail officially connecting the top and bottom of Pilot Hill through the schoolyard. So get out and enjoy it while it's still fresh. It's really pretty great. Second update, I am participating in the Mountain Towns 2030 program with several, with Councilor Doherty and then a few staff members, and then Monica Leiniger from R and the Powder River Basin Resource Council. The city manager had offered to, that is really a climate change sort of cohort, really aimed at sharing information and best practices so that we don't duplicate a bunch of sort of like the internal work before being able to engage in programs and really trying to shorten the timeline on some of these just by sharing best practices. And the city manager has offered to share what Laramie has been up to at the next meeting that is coming up soon. You know, I think it will be an interesting conversation because it really is a lot of mountain towns, sort of like, you know, Vail, Jackson, Breckenridge, those sort of places that are doing these really like dynamic, big projects. And I think our story is pretty exciting because it's really integrated into everything we're doing in a way that's really a lot more grassroots. And I'm excited to share what we're up to with them. So that would be those are my updates and no comments.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Harrington. Anybody else?
Any
Counselor
sort of-
O'Doherty. Counselor O'Doherty?
So I'm going to go to WHAM, but I'm really just going to go to the business meeting. So I sent everybody an email. Please reply just to me about if any of those resolutions give you heartburn. And I will vote on that. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I'm going to the Mountain Towns thing, which is Thursday. So if it's pretty cool because Park City, Brian, that they have a lot of innovations and places like Moab and things like that. So there's a lot of innovative things that cities are doing so we can learn from one another. Thanks.
Yeah, I love Park City. So mountain biking in the summertime, skiing in the wintertime. So Olivia Newton-John concert. Anyway, sorry. You're showing my age. Anyway, anybody else?
Counselor Somerville has her hand up.
I am, all right, well, Counselor Somerville, give it a go.
Thanks, Vice Mayor. So I don't have any updates. I just had one quick comment. I think everybody got an email with a letter from a Miss Sloan. I believe she's 11 years old or so, regarding some Parks and Recs investment specific to softball. And I had a chance to have a conversation with her and her mother. And I haven't sent this information into staff yet, but her requests were well thought out. I was just duly impressed. Things like, can we have cubbies in the dugouts so we could have somewhere to put our gear? Can we make the dirt, she didn't say fluffier, thicker, something along those lines? I'm out of my element with softball. I haven't played in like 20 years. But anyways, I reached out to her, made that contact, and she had some very, what I thought were well thought out requests, and I'm going to send those into Nina and Todd to follow up with her.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you. Mayor, just to give you an update, I went ahead and tabled the ward discussion, moved on to council comments and updates, and I believe we just have Pat Gabriel left for council comments, if I'm, maybe Councilor Cumby. Anyway, we just have him left, and then we can either jump back or you can decide what you want to do.
Well, I'll leave it up to you, but let's get Councilmember Gabriel's updates.
Great. Thanks, Mayor. Attended the July 1st Pilot Hill ribbon cutting event at the end of Willett Drive. Good crowd. Following the short ceremony, some of us ventured up to the Pilot Hill area east of the water tower to cut the barbed wire fence, which opened things up to the public. And it was a very encouraging ceremony indeed. Cutting barbed wire fencing is pretty interesting as well. It was good to hear from the city manager on what the trailhead would look like. And so that's, I know, on the docket for the city and the Pilot Hill people. And let's see, what else do I have to talk about? Oh, I had an eye on the county commissioners and Connect Gen Wind turbine project. It passed tonight 3-0 with some restrictions. Of course, they have some other agencies to discuss Connect Gen with, but that's a big one tonight, 3-0 in favor of the wind project for Albany County. And let's see, with that, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gabriel. Vice Mayor, thank you for stepping in there. My battery died. I thought I was going to make it. You know how we are. We can extend any topic. Council, unless there's an objection, I would like to finish up our ward discussion because I think we can. I think I saw us moving towards an option where we said, if you want to meet in person, do it. There's no expectation for the staff to be there. My assumption is that there will be at least one member from every ward that would prefer or is willing to also host a Zoom meeting with breakout rooms and follow an unrestricted time format. It might not be perfect. Some of those questions and concerns about people's willingness to be as forthcoming at the Zoom meetings as they might be in a one-on-one meeting are legitimate. On the other hand, I would say that we're not powerless in that situation where we can say, look, this is an open-ended discussion. Feel free to talk as much as you'd like on a topic, within reason. We only do those for about an hour and a half, and we'll see how that goes. And I'll tell you, probably my biggest reason for being willing to try that is because, as Councilor Schuster mentioned earlier in the discussion, what's it going to look like in October and November? And maybe we want to continue to have ward meetings, and maybe we need to have a willingness to continue to do those in different formats and be a little bit experimental with it. If it's terrible and we receive a lot of feedback from attendees at either one, that they didn't like one thing over the other about it, then we can revisit the topic. I think we should give it a try and see how it goes. For those of you that are more willing to do it in person, and those of you who have the preference for Zoom, let's just respect and appreciate the differences and perspectives and the differences in concerns about those. I'll say this, I wouldn't like to hear about beating up on people that didn't want to meet in person just because they didn't want to meet in person. I don't think you folks would do that, and vice versa in any other direction for people that want to meet in Zoom. Let's give it a try and see how it goes, because all we're really talking about is trying to get those ward meetings back up and going so people can come in and talk to us about what they want to talk to us about in a little more relaxed format. So let's just give it a try. Councilmember Cumby, I saw you had a hand up.
It's no longer relevant. Thank you.
Okay. Any serious objections to going that way, folks, and seeing how it goes? All right, City Clerk, do you have Councilmember Schuster, please.
We said we might talk about this in 2 weeks, so save your thoughts and give them again in 2 weeks, and we'll see how it goes. So, like you said, I don't want to cut anybody off. I don't want to, not going to make fun of anybody or anything like that. You have to decide if you're comfortable. If you're not, you're not. Just be it so that if we're comfortable, we're comfortable. If we're not, we're not.
Thank you, Councilmember Schuster, and I appreciate your views on this topic. And I want to communicate, I don't think it's unreasonable to have this discussion at this point and figure out what we want to do. And I very much appreciate the comments that you just made. And I think that's the way we have to run this thing. So we'll revisit it again and see where people are at. City Clerk, do you have a pretty reasonable idea of how we might do that if we end up going with the split? Somebody will need to help us with the Zoom part about it, and for those attendees that might want to do the Zoom and then the breakout rooms. And then I think it's going to be up to people's personal choices about in-person meeting if that happens. But I saw you had a hand up as well, so go ahead.
I think we have a pretty good idea of how to move forward on it right now. What I was going to suggest is that we probably take the next couple of weeks to do research, make sure we know exactly what publications are going to look like, and things to that nature. See if we can get the man shell reserved and things like that. And then at your first meeting in August, we'd probably go ahead and just place an agenda item so you can discuss what we've come up with, just with a final stamp of approval kind of thing, and on we go. So that's kind of what I'm envisioning.
Thank you. I agree. Sounds good to me. And I see that most of the councils nodded or indicated they can live with it. So that's good. And thank you, everybody, for that discussion. It's a weird situation, one that I know we're all hoping, praying isn't going to take forever to get out of. So we'll see where we're at in another little while. Do we want to do the Vice Mayor, you were able to get through everybody's comments and updates, were you?
I believe so. I didn't have anything to add, because I kind of talked about it during our update, and unless you want to add something, I think we're good.
The only thing I'd add is there's an upcoming meeting of the Civil Service Commission to go over new employee matters for the fire department and the police department. And I don't have anything more to say other than it's upcoming, and I'll give you an update about it next time. So I think we're all right. And thanks for getting that done. Why don't we do the agenda review? And I'll just, first come, first serve. Go ahead, Councilmember O'Doherty.
Are we trying to be systematic? Because mine is at near the end, the scooters.
Nah, let's just go. Go ahead.
I'm surprised to see this pop up, so I would like to know more about it before I would like it to be referred to the Traffic Commission. Thanks.
Okay. Is there support for Councilmember O'Doherty's suggestion that this be reviewed to the Traffic Commission? Councilmember O'Doherty, my immediate question is, in order to be to kind of get a referral that way, I still think it's okay to have it come forward for the first time on the agenda and then be referred. Councilmember Schuster?
I agree with her completely. I'm having some minor issues with electric bikes passing me on the streets, going over the speed limit. I see the same thing happening with scooters. I have some antique scooters from the 1950s that they're faster than me, but yet I have to have full insurance and a license on mine. And I think it's going to become a very big problem soon with not following traffic signals and everything else, because we don't have to, is what I'm told. So, yeah, I got a big issue with that.
Okay, go ahead. Back to you, Councilmember O'Doherty.
I'd also like to involve the Disability Council because our visit to San Antonio showed me that those rental scooters just can block up sidewalks and everything, making it so you can't get down the sidewalk with a wheeled vehicle. Thanks. So maybe we could have it on the agenda and then refer it to those committees for input.
I think so. We've talked about this before, and this is exactly why we covered that topic, is something like this might come up. So let's follow what we talked about doing, bring it forward for the first reading, and then refer it to those two respective committees, because I think it makes sense to have them go to both of them so that they can get some input on it. City Manager, do you have any objection or anything you'd like the council to consider with using the procedure that way? We'll give her a second. She might be away. City Clerk, do you have any input on that?
Mayor, given that we can't take, real formal action at a work session, I think that would be totally appropriate.
Okay. And I think it makes sense to bring it forward on a first reading before referring it to our boards and commissions anyway. So
yeah, this is a one vote item.
Oh, I see.
MOU. So just to note that.
So that motion may need to be modified at the time of the meeting. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, thanks. A little bit of background from the agenda review meeting. I had pretty similar thoughts regarding, having them just kind of, the scooters just laying around town, so to speak, or bunched up or whatever. And I think we're going to learn a lot from Assistant City Manager Fieser and our city manager related to all the preliminary discussions that they have had. They're good with this particular company. I mean, from what I recall from our agenda review meeting, they're going to have an employee that goes around and picks them up, and not a city employee is my understanding, but they're going to have somebody who's charged with basically cleaning and standing up and organizing the scooters. It's also, this particular company is looking very similar. I mean, they're talking with the University of Wyoming as well. So I think they're also working with the city of Cheyenne. So there is a lot of preliminary stuff that staff have already done. So I think it's very important that we listen to the presentation and the preliminary work, and then kind of make a decision after that, because it's just not like, kind of a fly by night kind of operation and functionality, and where they're going to be able to scoot, I guess might be the word. So I think we just kind of need to listen first and then make a decision if we want to chat about it more or refer it to traffic and disability, which makes some good sense. I don't know if they were consulted or not, but I think that's all good. And from that meeting, I was pretty encouraged, right, at a transportation opportunity for the community. So just kind of on first glance. Thank you.
Yep, go ahead.
Councillor Pierce has actually kind of hit the nail on the head related to some of the discussions we've had, and there is a bit of a push. They'd like to get deployed, and this MOU is actually only intended to go through December 31st of 2021, kind of as a trial period too. So it's not a long-standing MOU, and it gives us a chance to see if this community even wants it or wants a taste of it. It's also cancelable without cause by either party with 30 days notice. I think until you see the MOU and hear the presentation, I think it's important to, at least let that happen before we talk about referrals.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager Fieser. And as the city clerk said, certainly we're not taking any action at the work session. As far as the other council comments, yeah, I think that makes sense to bring the item forward and get the presentation and ask your questions and answer your questions. And certainly you have the ability then to still make a motion to amend and refer the item to the committees that we mentioned. That all seems fair all the way around. And maybe you won't feel the need to do that as you do tonight, and maybe you will. That's fair. Okay. Any follow-up on that? All right. Other agenda items. And I said it's fine to go out of order. So just if you see something else on there. I've got a discussion coming up about an amendment to the fee-for-service contract for the Laramie Chamber Business Alliance. I assume everybody understands what we're doing there. But there'll be another opportunity to catch up on Chamber Alliance's perspectives on economic development efforts in the future, and also hear more about what they've got going on right now. Other agenda questions, consent or regular? Not seeing any. Oh my gosh, we have a Rockstar of the Month presentation for Jennifer Wade, which is well earned and deserved. So that'll be good. That'll be good. I don't have anything else on here. I had an opportunity to look at it before, and I didn't see anything. A lot of this stuff looks like good and interesting topics that'll probably garner some discussion. I don't see anything that's going to take up more time than any other. We may have some questions and answers about the scooters, and we've already covered that. We've got an executive session on there, so we'll try to keep that in mind as we pace our work for the meeting. Hey, City Manager.
Hi, Mayor. I just wanted to let you all know that I think we'll have the county health officer with us for the proclamation and the resolution on the vaccination goal. So it may be unusual in that we would have a sort of presentation with a proclamation, but I hope the council will be willing to indulge that. Thank you.
Yeah, and City Manager, I think what we should do with that, without any objection from the council, is go ahead and have the presentation portion of that first, just like we would with any other item we were going to vote on, and have that portion of it go. and then we'll go to the vote on the resolution. My understanding is also the county is doing the same and is adopting a similar, or intends to adopt a similar resolution. And so our hope
That
is
is
to
correct.
good. So our hope is to sort of match up with the timing there with their efforts as well. Okay. Well, I don't see any other hands up. I see people coming to the end of their tolerance for this meeting, so I think we'll see if there's a public comment about anything that we didn't cover in the agenda meeting, and turn it over there for just a moment. Okay, yep, I didn't see anything. I didn't see the city clerk seeing anything either, so let's close our work session. City clerk, hang out with me for just a minute longer so I can talk to you about an email you sent me. And everybody else, good night and thanks for being here, and we'll see you again soon.
Good night.